to another classical music podcast. Welcome. Our guest today is Professor Jong Park. Professor Park is a professor at the Seoul National University and a graduate of some of the top conservatories in the world. Even more impressively, a laureate, prize winner at some of the most prestigious and toughest competitions in the world, such as the Queen Elizabeth, the Busoni, and so forth. Professor Park is the chairman of the jury for the International Kirov competition, which is taking place now and running through October. And with that, welcome, Professor Park.
Thank you, Emil. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. The last time that we saw each other was at the Kirov International Music Festival last summer. It seems like a million years ago, but how have you been coping with the post-plague world?
I have to be honest, in the beginning, it was not even shocking, just a little bit frustrating not to be able to see people. And, of course, concerts getting canceled. They're quite frustrating, but, we didn't expect it to prolong for such a long time. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting used to this or we are sort of changing with it. It's curious.
I think I certainly, for my part, no longer find it weird that, in order to give a lesson, I run down to, my office and I turn on my computer to give a lesson rather than, having students in person. That I don't feel the need to call my manager because, honestly, what is she going to tell me that I don't already know? Is it any different, do you think, in Korea compared to the United States for the arts?
You mean concerts-wise or teaching-wise?
Yeah, concerts-wise. Do you have any sort of light on the horizon?
Well, here in Korea, the COVID-19 actually peaked around, I would say, in March, April, and we had already start of the decline in May, when U.S. was experiencing very sharp gain, especially in New York, with Governor Cuomo appearing at CNN. What a heroic action! I mean, I have to comment. At CNN every day. So actually going into May, June, July, Korea was sort of opening up, and especially with the classical music. We meaning government, was allowing organizers to have concerts, because but you have to notice that the rock concerts or the big format concert was forbidden. So classical concerts were sort of starting up around there in August. Actually, we had really lots of concerts. Now, going into September, we are shutting down again. We have a small second spike, and we're shutting down again. And we're seeing a pattern here. We're gonna have this on and off. Concert, no concerts, no concert, concert, no concert. So, it makes you realize how important concert life is.
Yes.
If you're performing for musicians.
Yes,
it really gives you energy. It sort of drives your life forward.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to play, of course, but when you have a concert for which to prepare, it's a very different kind of practicing that you do, a kind of different kind of organizing of your day that you do.
Yes, of course, that as well. But with COVID, another advantage of COVID, if we can call it advantage, is that you save time, traveling time. You don't move around.
True.
You stay
That's
home.
True.
So you are able to sort of use your time more efficiently. You take out that transportation time. And actually, I had more time to practice. So whereas before, I would just move around from teaching, rehearsals, and meetings. I would now do everything from home, like we're doing now, either Zoom or an internet. And it allowed me to sort of organize my time more efficiently. So you get more practice time. So in that sense, it is more consistent, the practice,
right?
In a way. Yeah, but as you said, the performing, it's
you can be practicing. You can be practicing, but I've my reason for having done as many competitions as I did was to give myself an artificial goal towards which I was practicing.
Exactly. Yeah. When that goal disappears, it's sort of let down. But I think the true sort of objective of practice is learn to have systematic thing that makes you improve just for yourself, not for people. So if you consider that performance and competition, having some sort of goal, it helps you. It's motivation factor. It helps you to prepare. It gives you stress. It gives you pressure.
It gives you deadlines.
So that sort of helps. Yes. So that sort of helps, I would say, get better in short term. But the most important thing when practicing is to have that long-term vision and just work towards
personal growth, of personal development.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's. Well, no, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, and I've been noticing that if you don't have that long-term vision, it's sort of you have this up and down in your life with practicing. Yeah, and that doesn't really help you when you decide to be musician for a life.
Yeah, I've often told my students, unlike other things, you can't cram practicing. If you haven't been putting the time in and you practice like crazy the day before a lesson, you're not gonna, it's gonna be terrible at the lesson. If you practice the day before a concert, etc. But that's actually a good sort of segue to an entire area of your life I wanted to talk about, which was your studies on 3 continents. I assume you started when you started playing the piano. I assume you started in Korea, right?
Yes, I did.
And then you graduated from New England Conservatory. You studied with world-renowned artists, both in the US and in Europe. So looking back at yourself as a student, speaking in terms of the motivation that you had then, what do you remember about it? How does it compare to the motivation that you have as an adult performing artist?
I think having that long-term vision, long-term goal is difficult for everyone. Yes, I was born in Korea, and I was educated in Japan, and then I moved to the States.
How old were you when you moved to the States?
I was 6.
Wow. Okay.
And I have to say I was very lucky to meet all these fantastic teachers throughout my life. But in Japan, I was enrolled in this prep school for talented children, and they had a very, very strict schedule for every year. And I remember I had to learn whole invention by Bach when I was first grade in elementary school. And learn it by meaning you have to memorize it, and then they will test you at the end of the year. And you come into the room like little kid, and they tell you to play which number, and then you had to.
Oh, you had to memorize all the inventions?
Yes, and the second year was symphonies.
Wow.
Bach symphonies. Like this,
wow.
they had a schedule of very strict repertoires that you had to, digest. It was quite tough, but after second year, you sort of get used to it, and you go with it.
Well, it becomes the new normal. It becomes your
Yes,
your
exactly.
daily routine.
Yes. So I guess in those days, yeah, the Japan had really that this was trend in Japanese musical education, which sort of moved down to Korea like 10 years later. But yeah, I was educated in this setting. Uh, and then I moved to States, and I was lucky enough to meet Russell Sherman. And Russell Sherman had completely different sort of approach to musical education, which was quite intellectual and philosophical. And we had to read a lot of books. We had to discuss contents of those books associated with the music that we were playing. And it was completely different experience. And then after education in Boston, I moved to Europe, and I was active as a performer there for roughly around 10 years until I returned to Korea to pursue to take this position at Seoul National University. Um, in Europe,
So
I
you
met
studied.
different.
Sorry. So you studied with Leon Fleischer in Europe, or still in the States?
No, that I would say I had rapport with these great musicians. Rather, I was enrolled in. I was part of this foundation for pianoforte in Italy. So in Italian, Il Fondazione per il Pianoforte. It was founded by very famous entrepreneur in Germany. His dream was to become pianist, but he became businessman, and after his success, he decided to build this foundation. And the scheme of this foundation is very, very interesting. They choose 7 pupils from the world, and they invite about 5 or 6 maestries, and then they come and stay with you for weeks, for a week. So
What do you mean they
every
come and
month,
stay with you?
yes, a
They
week
come
out
and
of month.
stay at the.
Yes, they stay at the villa. They had a villa, and they have villa. It's sort of a little vacation for them, working vacation. So they would come a week out of month. There would be a maestro there living with you. Of course, we'll be living in other apartments, but we'll come to villa during the day. We spend a day here there. Yeah, I met Fleischer, Argerich, Karl Ulrich Schnabel, Futsong, Bashkirov, Dmitri Bashikrov. Who else was this? Elisso
Wow.
All these pianists.
I mean, legends.
Yeah, all these legends. I had the chance to meet them there. We took walks together. We had a breakfast together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we had master classes every day for the week. For that,
That's amazing. That's an amazing opportunity, really.
Yes. So that's and we have notable alumni, very notable alumni from Fondazione. Udenich. Udenich is from Fondazione as well. Who else? The French-Polish pianist, very famous. I forget the name. He's very famous. Yeah. Anyway, we have very notable alumni from that piano institution.
But it's a kind of like almost dormitory situation, like a cross pollination from the A-list performers of legend to the young rising stars in a way that a festival wouldn't offer, a master class wouldn't offer. It's not as in depth. This is an entire week of just getting to know the person behind the legendary name.
Yes, it was an incredible setting. I would say that the best experience that that environment provided was, of course, the master classes, the transfer of the knowledge, but it was the transfer of the knowledge in other sense. It was the stories that they would tell us, like when we were having breakfast, lunch, dinner, or when we were taking walk. they would tell us stories about Rubinstein, like Rosalind Dudek would tell us stories about Rubinstein when she was a little girl, for example. Karl Ulrich Schnabel would tell us a story about his father, Arthur Schnabel.
Arthur Schnabel.
Yeah. Leon Fleisher also would tell us stories about his childhood and when he was younger. The stuff that this inside stories that we would never know. That helped us a lot. Actually, that helped me a lot. Of course, the musical knowledge is enormously helpful. It's inspiring,
but it's also informed by personality and by setting and by context.
Yes, it tells you the personality, the discipline, the musical life itself. You hear about this, and you suddenly get something that you wouldn't get.
This is a common thing that I have talked about both in these podcasts and in lessons with students. If you're just practicing in a room by yourself, your sense of context of there becomes this one way of playing, let's just say this one particular phrase, and after a while you forget that there might be some other way, or some other way of playing not just this one little moment but this entire piece, or some other way of not just playing this entire piece but the works of this composer. And when you become more and more sort of insular, especially in a world where so much information is available to everybody, you end up you end up not growing, for starters. You end up also becoming kind of disenchanted. You're listening to the wrong things in your own playing, and then when you go out on stage, you end up disenchanted with the response you get, which is lukewarm.
Yeah. You get this. You start to focus on several things or one thing that doesn't really make difference for the whole performance.
Yes.
And your delivery, I would say execution, gets distorted.
Yes.
And because these musical knowledge and focusing on music is good, but these stories gave me context.
Exactly.
In which where these musical knowledge came from, and that really helps you a lot. Yeah.
I have found for myself that there are some things, and I've only found this since I started to teach, 10, 15 years ago. I found that there are some things that I have to tell a student, this is, in bad taste, or this is ineffective, or whatever. And after I say this, I feel the thought going through my head, how do you not know this? And right after that thought comes another thought that says, well, the only reason I know this is because XYZ told me this. My mother told me this. This great teacher told me this. I heard this, in a concert, in a competition, in a recording. But I too had to learn this. But I had the advantage of living in the family of a performing musician, so I sort of ingrained it. It has become automatic. I don't sometimes realize that there are things that you need to be told, that you need to learn. Things beyond, the notes that you play, things beyond, how many hours a day you practice.
Yes. There are many musicians that who comes from different walks of life. As you said, you come from generations of musicians, and you certainly have advantage in getting that, the knowledge is within family setting, which is really the best. But in my case as well, having that very strict technical basis in Japan, and to have that very strong, very strong intellectual sort of basis in Boston with Russell Sherman, and to have that experience in Europe with these maestries, just.
When you were studying with Professor Sherman, did you already start to compete, or was that later?
Actually, we weren't very big on competitions. We were sort of more exploring the repertoires and the knowledge. But at the later stage of learning with him, we started to try competitions.
And what?
Yes. Go ahead.
How did that progress? Did you proceed from smaller ones to bigger ones? Did you choose them? Did he choose them?
No, not really. It went like um, him saying, "Well, let's try. Why don't we try this competition?" I think it was because I was sort of growing up, becoming young adult. I was finding other things of interest.
Naturally.
Yes. And he was way of sort of putting me back on the right track.
Again,
And
giving you a goal to aim for beyond next week's lesson.
yes. Yes. The first one was quite big one. We tried the Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth was your first competition?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And I remember the repertoire was huge.
Of course.
And you don't play all of them. You just
no.
You have to,
the violin section. They told us, I think it was a month beforehand, which light romantic concerto we would play in the first round. And they told us, I think, the day of or 5 minutes before going on stage, which Paganini caprice of the 3 that you had prepared that you would be playing in the next 5 minutes. And then they sent you a month before a modern piece that you play in the second round. Yes. And then, of course, in the final round, they lock you away. It's the same with piano, yes? They lock you in the chapelle, and they give you a completely new piece, and they say, here's a week, learn this piece with orchestra.
Yes. Yeah, I prepared somehow. They're cruel like that. But I was lucky enough to pass to the final and become a laureate. So it was very successful experience. And
I have to underscore for anyone watching, I have to underscore how unusual that experience is, because I was just telling a friend or a student, I don't remember, I was telling students today how, although I had grown up with my mother's stories of competing at the Tchaikovsky and at the Long Thibault competition and at the Nescu competition, I thought I knew what to expect and what it would feel like. And I was stupid enough to go to my first international competition to do the Tchaikovsky. And of course, I didn't even go to the second round. Because I realized once I was there that I had no clue, not about level, not about what real stress feels like, not about, what just the flavor of the competition. For you to go from never doing competitions to doing the toughest one in the world and to walk out a prize winner, if I ever wore hats, I would take my hat off to you.
But, I have to tell you that I didn't experience any stage fright until I was in my late 30s.
Wow.
It's very interesting.
Why? So, how?
I would, since I was a boy, I would just be playing, playing soccer or doing something, killing a bug or something. And then next moment I'm on the stage just playing. And it was just, I didn't care. It was the intuitional thing for me, and as well, when I did Queen Elizabeth, there was sort of no stage flight experience. I would just go on a stage and just play very naturally.
That, again, I am in awe.
I don't know if that was good or bad, because...
Well, if you could focus on the playing and not be thinking about playing soccer, not be thinking about killing a bug, but be focused on what you're playing and not be distracted by the TV camera or the hall full of people. What freaked me out was the thought that the Queen of Belgium is sitting there in the hall. It scared the living daylights out of me, and a friend of mine said, but she's a sweet lady. I mean, what does it matter, what kind of hat she wears?
No, but when I really start to have the stage fright at later stage in my life, I think it was because I didn't really know what respect meant in music as a young adult. so I was able to play it more, carefully sort of way. I think it started when I started to teach.
And you feel yourself sort of doing the things you told your student not to do?
I think that's part of that, but by approaching music differently, and you're in the position to sort of transfer knowledge downstream. I think you start to understand what responsibility means in classical music as you get older and your position changes. Yes.
I remember taking a promising young student of mine to play for Professor Dunchenko. This was early in my teaching experience.
She's a legendary professor, by the way, isn't she?
Yeah, Victor Dunchenko. Yeah. And the student was, I think, 13 at the time, and she got quite nervous, and she played much worse than she usually did for me. And afterwards, he was very sweet to her. My mother was there, so maybe that was, a calming influence. He didn't feel the need to tell her maybe everything that was wrong. But afterwards, I stepped aside with him and I said, she usually plays much better. We've been working on her not getting stage fright. And he said, Emil, don't work on this. She's 13. She's a kid. She doesn't know that she's supposed to be frightened. You're telling her she's supposed to be frightened. Don't take advantage of the fact that they don't know that what they are doing is so difficult. Just help them to play.
Yeah.
So somewhere your professors deserve, so much praise and thanks for having managed to avoid telling you in your 20s that what you were doing was actually impossibly difficult.
Wow. I didn't think like that. Yes. Now that you say it. Yeah. So these many different style of teachings I experienced. Some of the musicians really believe that it's better, advantageous to have just one teacher, one style of teaching throughout life.
You beat me to that question. Yeah. Tell me.
But I think from my experience, I was lucky enough to have the right teacher at the right time. In Japan, very strict technical sort of training that was necessary for that age. And then to move on to Boston to really explore intellectual side of the music. At that age, I think I was just right age.
How old were you in Boston? 18, right?
I was there from around 15 or 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were in the you were in the pre-college program at New England?
Yes, I was. And then I went into bachelor's program to master's. So I was there for about 10 years, and then to move to Europe and have my freedom of just exploring, do the exploration.
But you had matured to the point where you could take information from different sources and synthesize it for yourself. Yes.
Yes, and from my two previous very strong foundations, I think I was able to sort of converse with teachers, not just observe what they were giving you. So I think that's the most important thing. Once you have basics and you could sort of synthesize your own thoughts in music, which means that it just means that when you face a piece of music, if you know what you want to know, what you want to do,
how you want it to sound, what you want to
exactly
achieve with it.
Yes, when you have this in your brain, I think you can study with many different teachers and be successful. But if you don't have that voice in your head and you're sort of lost and you need guidance every time you face new piece of music, then maybe it's better to have one style of teaching, one teacher teaches you until you're ready.
I mean, there are the legendary teachers, even now, of course, whose students are. It's almost like seeing an artist's handiwork. You can recognize the Van Gogh across the room. You can recognize, the Rodin sculpture across the room, and you can recognize the students of teacher XYZ, because they all seem to kind of play the same way. And I think for students like that, it may not be possible for them to successfully take information from another teacher. But they are at the level of mastering the instrument, not necessarily, becoming artists. For somebody who is entering into a professional track, whoops,
Sorry.
For someone entering a professional track, of course, they need to not play like somebody's, trained product. They need to play like their own person. So your 10 years in Europe, I mean, I can't imagine how you could possibly replicate that other than exactly that way. You put somebody in the middle of great artists and let them both listen and play for and talk to those artists on a daily basis.
Yes, the foundation for pianoforte was fantastic experience. But after that, I have to say that it's playing with friends, playing with musicians on the stage, chamber music, and the repertoires that you start to learn, that starts to shape you, after that. So now, after you go through that phase, I think it's the composers that really
become your friends.
And influences your style in a way. So if you are learning Rachmaninoff, you're so into Rachmaninoff, and suddenly you get it. You get Rachmaninoff. You think you get it, Rachmaninoff, and you're playing in this style. And when you're that much into one composer, you could play Brahms, but sometimes you play it like
Rachmaninoff. Yeah.
Yes. So
do you find when you've been on juries of competitions, or when you're listening to people auditioning for the university, do you find that you are listening for, okay, how is your Beethoven different than your Brahms? How is your Chopin different than your Liszt? Do you listen for that personally?
Yes, but when I work with students, or when I am in the competition, listening for the performance, yes, of course, I listen for the style, difference of styles, of course, and it's really crucial part of presentation at competition, because you are usually you are it's necessary for you to present the pieces of different era.
Yeah. Every round, of course, has a wide variety. Again, for the people watching who have not either observed a competition or not played in one, a true international competition would feature a minimum of 3 rounds, would feature multiple works per round, and those works are going to span from Bach through 2020.
Exactly. Yeah. And this styles of different styles, delivering different styles of it with different era, piece of different era. We can see, we can sort of judge your understanding in music.
Yeah.
But in reality, I have to say that these things, as the age group gets younger, I would say that these depends on teachers more than the performance, because it's quite difficult to sort of teach younger children about the style, really. After high school, junior high school, yes, I think it's possible. But even for us, it's very difficult to really get the style for each distinctive era. And for us to expect this from the kids, it's quite not nice. I would have to say.
But sometimes a kid is either born with it or has osmosed it.
Yeah, but I would say that it falls upon the teachers.
Yeah.
So we're actually judging the teachers rather than the kids. in that sense when it
Yes.
comes to style. Yes.
But then you get into the situation of, okay, so you see a young player, and they obviously understand that Bach is supposed to sound less romantic than Rachmaninoff. They pedal it differently, if at all, because I think pedal in Bach probably is the same for piano as glissando in Bach is for violin. For me, that person stops. I stop listening to them the moment that I hear that. But you hear all the right things, and yet you also hear that the young player is following a set of instructions. None of those things make sense to them. They may as well be repeating a sentence in a foreign language that they don't speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, do you sort of acknowledge the fact that they have successfully followed the instructions and leave it at that? Or do you say, yes, but I'm looking for someone who understands why the instructions are what they are?
You're talking about the instructing style.
Stylistic playing.
Yeah, methods. When it comes to style, I don't think there's one absolute sort of formula that you can, expect them to follow. When it comes to style, it's that feeling, or is that thing, is that thing that you can't really explain, that they have to get it. Is probably the most important, difficult thing to teach. It's like you're invited to a party, right? And the dress code is so and so. Like in let's say Halloween.
Business casual.
Business
okay.
casual. Let's say Halloween, right?
Yeah.
And you can have many different actually styles, but once everybody gather, you can see that somebody doesn't belong and somebody belongs. For me, style is like that. There's no one absolute way of playing. Of course, when you go into the details, there are little rules and treatises that it's good for you to know. But actually, if you know this, it helps. For me, style is something like that. You just have to get it.
Would you agree?
You can accessorize. You can do whatever you want on top of that once you get it. And for the accessories and a little bit extra and your own interpretations, I don't think anybody should be penalized on that. Once you get it, you get it.
But would you agree that while there are many right ways, there also are some ways that are undeniably wrong? Or do you think there is no such thing as a wrong stylistic approach?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like I told you, if you see that it doesn't belong in the party, then definitely you should that should be criticized. But as the student gets younger, the younger students, I think we should give more freedom for them
to make those explorations and mistakes. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. And you know what? By them making those explorations and exercising their imaginations, they have sometimes we've lost imaginations that we used to have as kids. And sometimes working with younger children, you're sort of refreshed by those imaginations, and they actually provide professors with fresh perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have lived for, they have been rare, but I've lived for the moments where a student plays something that I've played a million times, and they do something new, a new phrasing, a new fingering, a new whatever, and maybe they do it on purpose. To my shame, once a student, an advanced student, played a Bach fugue for me, and the subject comes back, and suddenly she was playing it legato, whereas before it was marcato. And I said, "Why are you doing this?" And she goes, "Well, it's inverted, the subject." And I was like, "Right? It's why am I so stupid? Why did I had gotten so used to just playing it the way that the teacher said, At a moment like that, teaching is not teaching. Teaching is learning. I love those moments.
And for these moments to exist, you can't. You have to keep things open.
Yeah, you have to keep your mind open. I think this is one area in competitions where I am very jealous of my mother's experience, because When she was doing competitions, there were fewer of them, and the people who were on the juries were great performers. So her first competition was the UNESCO competition, and the jury included Henrik Schering, George Georgescu, Kabalevsky, so composers, conductors, violinists, and now so often, of course, competitions will have professors. So the danger is that somebody who has played and taught a work, for many years the same way, might not be willing to hear the work differently. Do you have some way that you make sure that you don't do that, that you are listening with a fresh perspective when you are listening to repertoire that you know really well?
Yeah, I think you are on a very sensitive topic with the competitions. Yeah, it's not that the juries are listening to the same piece of music all the time, but the problem is that the performers, actually, the competition participants, when they start to do big competitions, most of them, they really don't change the repertoire.
Right.
Yeah, they stick with the repertoire that they can really do well.
And have done, in the last 10 competitions.
Yes, and they repeat them over and over. And this may go on for more than 5-6 years.
Yeah.
At a period where they are expected to learn the monstrous amount of music. So that is sort of dangerous for danger of competition for the participants. But for us, it's when they play the same piece of music, it's actually easier for us jury members to compare them.
Would you say that that's, I found for me, there was a limit. After listening to my 10th or 11th, Bach G minor fugue, I forgot, I kind of forget who is who. I remember the standout, the really, really bad one, the really, really fantastic one. But most of the rest sort of start to blur in my mind into one big mess.
Yes, I was thinking about getting a repetition of 2 or 3, but if you mentioned 10, yes, if you start to listen more than 5 or 6 times the same piece of music, that could become a problem. It sort of, everything gets distorted in your mind as well, of the listener's mind. There was very interesting experiments done to sort of test how listener's mind works. So the scientists prepared 3 different recordings of same piece, but they were different in tempo. Tempi was the crucial information
Factor.
that they wanted to check on. So the first recording was sort of normal speed. Let's say it was allegro, piece in allegro, it was normal speed. Second recording was played a bit slowly, and the third recording was played extremely fast. So they made the listeners listen the normal, and then slow and fast, and then as last one they repeated the first one at last. So of course everybody answered for the first one their own taste. It's too slow for me, it's too fast for me, it's it's perfect, whatever. But when the second one, in the comment, everybody said it was slower than the first.
They have a point of comparison.
Of course, it was faster. Yeah, it was in the comment. But when they repeated first one at the last, everybody said it was too slow.
Because they just listened to the thing that was too fast.
Yeah, exactly. And so, as you said, if you keep listening to different things, more you listen, more it gets distorted in your brain as well. It's true. Yeah. Getting back onto the subject of the competition and the repertoire, I feel like there's sort of trend in repertoire in competition as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So the taste of the day, In 2017, from 2019 is different. The pieces that were really popular in competition circuit in 2017 suddenly it just drops off because it gets played too much.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that everybody's looking for advantage, meaning that if you play obscure music that's really good, or the music that the participants has not played in competition
It's not
for
as
a long time.
It's not as vetted.
Exactly, and then they bring it back, and it sort of works as advantage to you because, as we discussed, as a listener, when you're sitting there listening for such a long time, and then you're presented with this like fresh piece of music nobody plays, and if it's done well, you stand to gain lots of advantage as participant. So I think that's that strategy, that drives this, change in trend. And another that I forgot to mention, and then when somebody experiences the success with this particular repertoire, and then it becomes enormously popular, then it gets overplayed, and then
So then it goes in cycles.
Continues. Yeah.
But for us, of course, there are more piano concerti than violin concerti, and once you start talking about the repertoire throughout a competition or the repertoire of a concert season, there's a lot more variety. But in a competition final round for violin, I think this goes back more than 20 years. It goes back to when I was just starting competitions. It goes back before then. For us, it's been the Sibelius Concerto as the default setting, and then invariably somebody tries something different. Like you say, there will be the year that everybody who's trying something different seems to be playing Bartok second, or everybody is playing, Tchaikovsky. But the same one or two concerti remain and have remained for us throughout. Do you think it's any similarity with piano? Is there like a piano concerto that no matter what the fashion, how the fashion changes, that one concerto stays?
Yeah, I mean, Rachmaninoff second and third. Yeah, there are these super concertos.
Chopin one.
Yeah, Chopin 1 and 2. Prokofiev third. Yeah. Beethoven.
Prokofiev third is such a monster that I would think, if a pianist really wants to show themselves to be a machine, you couldn't ask for a better piece.
Yeah, and also now Prokofiev second has become, in past decades or so, it's become very popular. Beethoven fourth and fifth, 3, 4, 5. If you can do it very well, then that's been the choice for sort of intellectually advantageous pianists.
It's funny because for us, one of the 10 commandments of violin competitions, thou shalt not play Beethoven concerto in the final round, unless thou art suicidal.
No, if you can do it very well.
I've one time, and in fact, I still remember this was when I was at the UNESCO. One person was playing Tchaikovsky. I was playing Mendelssohn, which is a weak concerto for the final. I don't remember what another person was doing. And one person was playing Beethoven. And I thought, well, I don't have to worry about them because, they're stupid. It's a teenager and he's playing Beethoven. He won. And because he played it beautifully. It was a phenomenal performance. But this was the exception in all of the contests that I've ever played as a contestant.
Yeah. In this, exactly. When you sort of present this tranquil, clean, very organized classical concerto, and when you can present it beautifully in the sea of storms of this bravura and this loud screaming of romantic concertos, then it has a big advantage. But back to concerto, those sort of super concertos, and of course Tchaikovsky first. But interesting thing, Tchaikovsky first. you know what happened in the last Tchaikovsky competition?
Yes, with the Chinese pianist, right?
The French pianist.
The one where they reversed the order of the Rachmaninoff.
Yes. That was a funny happening. Yeah, I
Right.
don't know what exactly went on there, but it was incredible how he switched.
Well, for
the
the viewers, I should just recount the story in case people haven't heard this story. But I'll take my turn after you. You were about to say about the French pianist, about
who won the competition actually.
Yeah,
and we were talking about the repertoire, so I'll stick with this subject, and then you can enlighten audience with what happened with Chinese.
The war stories, yeah.
So with this French pianist, he, everybody, for the final of the Tchaikovsky competition, you have to play Tchaikovsky concerto and another concerto. So
back to back, not two different nights. You go out, you come right back. Yep.
Yeah. So people usually play Tchaikovsky first, Bach third, or Prokofiev, whatever suits your delight. And it was the French pianist came on, and he performed Tchaikovsky's second concerto and another Russian concerto. I remember, but it was the first time in history or something.
The first time
in history of Tchaikovsky competition that somebody performed Tchaikovsky's second. And he did it well. They had no choice but to give him first prize.
Of course. No, but it's crazy that the Tchaikovsky competition began in 1958.
Yes.
It's insane to think that it wasn't in 2020, it was in 2018, the competition, 2019?
18, I believe.
60 years, 61 years, and no one had played the Tchaikovsky second piano concerto at the Tchaikovsky piano competition.
Yes.
Wow. With repertoire, there is a strategy. I think that's one thing that, again, for the people watching, there is a strategy to how you're going to show yourself, hopefully in a growing way from one round to another. A strategy in the contests that are marathons. Do you play the big concerto first or the smaller one to warm yourself up? I had entire sort of days filled with, okay, I have to play a Bach Adagio and Fugue, then I have to play some Paganini Caprices, I have to play some first movement of a Mozart concerto. What order should you play them in? It's not about just what the jury is going to hear and like, it's also about how are you going to feel? Are you going to feel exhausted after the first piece, warmed up, terrified by starting from this, first piece that is dangerous? Did you have these thoughts? Did you have these stratagems?
Yeah, and for me, it was more about those practical issues when you present things. It's very important, I would say. But I would add on to what you said. I think you brought up a very good point. I would add that the story is also important. When you present a program, it could be for the recital, it could be for a competition. You're presenting yourself. You're presenting your personality. You're presenting your knowledge. You're presenting your skills. So whatever focus you put, I want to present my skill. I want to present my knowledge. I want to present my character. Hopefully you want to do all three at the same time, but you could focus on each different things for different stages of the competition. So, but whatever you decide to do, I think it's important to have a story core, little storyline that weaves these pieces together.
A narrative.
Narrative. So, like for example, just because you want to showcase your skills, you just start playing different sort of etudes and virtuoso pieces without anything that sort of connects them. It might be impressive, but it's sort of disorientating for a listener. Yeah. So
And you have told a story, but it's not the story you wanted to tell. You've told a story about your how you perceive, connections from piece to piece, how you perceive the entire evening.
Yes.
Do you?
So,
Go ahead.
No. It's okay.
Do you have such suggestions or sort of tips? I'm thinking now specifically of the Kirov competition. Do you have sort of words of wisdom for contestants in terms of any of these things that we've discussed: choice of repertoire, order of presentation, stylistic versatility, especially given that there is a junior and a senior level to the competition?
I think we talked about many useful information for the participants. The one thing to notice is that this year's Kirov competition is electronically handled. So it's an e-competition, right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. You are listening to the piano, but the pianist is not there.
Yes. Yeah, we are listening to you, performing on the video. Yeah. And I think we've already discussed much about repertoire, but I think we should really now discuss about this part, the e-competition part. What happens when technology interferes with this presentation? I don't know if I have to say interference or the aid. Let me tell you about experience. There are lots of experiments going on at my university as well regarding music and technology. One of the experiments that's happening is about the perception of listeners. Yeah, and it's very interesting to note that they not only perceive the performance of the listeners, but they also perceive the level of technology. So, of course, these experiments are done not on the live performance, but recorded medium.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be CD, DVD, YouTube videos, or other medium, streaming or other medium. And we've noticed that regardless of quality of performance, when the technology, recording technology, or the video technology that was involved in capturing this particular performance, if the technology was good, the audience generally perceived performance to be good. Yeah. Let's say the performance is just, the same. It's the constant. And when the technology sort of got lower, they knew that he or she was a good performer, but they had bad perception of the performance. So the level of technology sort of interferes with the perception of the true perception of the audience. And I don't know what will happen this year, but this is an extremely interesting area for me. How to sort of pierce through that
How
the
to
barrier,
filter.
the filter the technology sort of gives audiences, the listeners, and to sort of get right to the performing, to right to the judging the performance itself. I think it's very difficult task for us when this technology involved capturing the performance. You cannot simply escape it. Like for example, we're doing tests right now, but I'm not using a professional microphone. If I had professional microphone in front of me, connected to several devices, going to computer and then getting to you and getting broadcasted, my voice would sound completely different.
Of course,
than
the
now.
timbre would be different. The echoes,
yeah, and they would perceive me as different person. different character, you know. So this is inescapable.
You know, the funny thing is that I think for pianists, specifically in competitions, this is a first. Because in every piano competition, every performer, every contestant comes out and plays in the same hall on the same instrument. But in violin competitions, this is not an unfamiliar problem for us, because you have the same hall, but one contestant is playing on a $10 million Del Gesù, and another contestant is playing on something that, shall we say, is not a $10 million Del Gesù. And it is expected that the judges would be able to say, okay, that's the violin doing the work for the player. The beautiful sound here and the less beautiful sound there is not the fault of the player. But of course, judges can't really say that. From my personal experience at one of my last competitions, I did not make the final round, and Vladimir Spivakov was on the jury. And after I did not make the finals, I went to talk to the jury to find out what I could do better. And he said, well, you need to clean this. And, he gave me some specifics. He said, but also, and he points to one of the contestants, he comes here with a Strad, points to another contestant. He comes here with Del Gesù. He comes here with Amati. And you, he points to me and he says, and you came here with a courtyard mutt. A dog with no pedigree whatsoever. And I thought at the moment, first of all, of course, I felt bad because my violin is not a courtyard, but of course, compared to a, Strat. And secondly, I also felt like, but Master Spivakov, shouldn't you be able to hear that, this player and this player are comparable? It's just that this one has a, better instrument. You can understand that that's the way it is, but it's very difficult to filter through. And now, of course, with e-competitions, the Kirov and I'm sure others, this problem is going to be addressed repeatedly. You're listening to different pianos, or you're listening to somehow the same piano but with different technology?
Yeah, as well. Now, there are
I just lost you.
Yeah, I just had COVID alert. In Korea, we get these alerts every 30 minutes. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly. And the only reason I know this is because for my Korean students, the lessons periodically get something that sounds like a flash flood warning.
I'm sorry about that. So, when you talk about capturing piano performance with the technology, it's very complicated. Yeah, as you said, I don't know how you judge the violinist with these different violins. And that's one of the reasons that violinists tries to get their hands on the best violin they can for the competition. I understand that. Same token, for pianists who are preparing for the e-competitions, I think microphone now then becomes very, very important. Piano is actually the most difficult instrument to capture in terms of recording, just because it has such wide range of sound. It's impossible to sort of catch purely those things. That's why the producers, engineers becomes enormously important in recordings. So if you are using very, very good microphone, and then you gain advantage. And if you are using not so good microphone, it's like just like you said, playing on Stradivari and lesser violin, and then
it might be an okay microphone for playing in a lesson even, but not when you're being judged by this much.
Yes, then suddenly the microphone becomes your instrument.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is valuable advice for anybody who is participating in a competition or in a competition similar to this. If you're trying to figure out where to spend your budget, ordinarily you would have spent $1,000, $1,500 to travel to the location of the competition, to stay in the hotel while you're competing, to eat the food, to have a per diem for yourself. Going to a competition is an expensive proposition. Now all of that money has been saved, so it's a good idea to plug at least some of that into your equipment.
Yeah, and generally, if you're a musician, I think you should own at least 2 microphones stereo, so you can record stereo. Once you invest in very good microphone, you can use them almost until you pass. So you can hand it down to your children if you want. Microphone is not a technology that goes that gets replaced every year, like smartphones, or the camera gets replaced every 2 or 3 years. There's new version. There's 4K today. There's 5K. There's 6K. It gets replaced every several years. But microphone is not. And actually, the vintage microphones are, extremely rare and pricey to get. So I think for musician, microphone is something that reasonably makes sense to invest in. But on the other hand, I'm sort of worried about disparity discloses for haves and have-nots.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's another important questions that we organizers have to ask ourselves. How to sort of reduce costs for participants, but keep the technology constant. And I think Kirov's on the right track on that issue as well. From what I heard, Kirov has just purchased Stereo.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So what this allows to do is competitors can play, or record on stereo in one continent and
send the file,
and then they can listen.
And the judges can sit, presumably socially distanced, in a room with a stereo piano that has no one sitting there, and like magic, that piano is producing, John Smith's performance from England, and Jane Doe's performance from Moscow, and Susie Smith's performance from Taipei. All of those performances are being played in real space for the judges.
Yeah, and in the future, I don't know if stereos can be connected via internet, TCP/IP protocol over the Ethernet. But if it can be done, then we can hold the competition
anywhere.
Yeah. So if stereo in Washington D.C. can be connected to a stereo in China, or stereo in Japan, stereo in England, Germany, and then they could probably go to Steinway Studio, and then they can perform, and the information would be sent real time, and jury can just listen to it.
There's still kinks to work out, logistics as well as technology. So, for example, do you really want a performer in China having to play at 4:00 in the morning, in order to go, back to back with a performer from Paris who's playing at, 8:00 in the morning? There's going to have to be new inventions of old paradigms. But like you said at the beginning, I think there are silver linings to be found. The fact that you can have 2 performers collaborate from 2 different continents without moving, it offers a kind of access that was unimaginable 6 months ago.
Yeah, and this new reality that COVID-19 is facing, that we have to face with COVID-19, is sort of accelerating the musician, classical music industry to sort of dive into these technologies. You know what? It's you can see this. I can see this around my surroundings going on. The professors that wouldn't think about doing YouTube or, you know,
Guilty.
purchasing microphones or cameras.
Yeah.
All of them are suddenly very, very interested in what microphones to buy, what cameras to buy,
Of course.
how can I live stream.
If
So
you had had this
this is
conversation with me 12 months ago, my eyes would have glazed over and my brain would have shut down. I remember 5 years ago or so, I remember somebody asking if I would consider giving them lessons online, and I very politely just basically said that no, this isn't the real thing. You know, and I had never really tried it, but it just seems so ridiculous that I'm going to be listening to you on a screen. I've actually found some advantages, even with younger students, with beginner students. I found advantages where ordinarily, if I just demonstrate something, across the room, a student is just going, well, now my teacher's playing and they sound good and I sound bad and I don't know why. But now I can lean into the camera. I can show you, okay, here's what I'm doing exactly with my thumb. Here's exactly where the hand is right in the student's face. You have necessity being the mother of invention, really.
There are lots of advantage in conducting teaching online as well. Technology, as you said, there are details that you could show close up as well. But just the format of conducting lessons online, it forces you to be more clear, more organized in your communication.
Yes.
You cannot go back and forth between the things. You cannot digress too much. There's certain advantage. In my case, I conduct my lessons online. When I conduct my lessons online, since the streaming, Zoom and all this is very inconsistent, depending on the technologies that they use, I use, and also speed of the internet. So what I ask them to do is record themselves and send it to me, and then we'll conduct a lesson based
together
on
listening.
That material, and that then practically becomes a review session. But this review session becomes a very, 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 very productive session, simply because the students are working, they're learning by themselves before the session by recording themselves several times. So
yes,
they're recording themselves, they're reviewing the recording, and they're doing it again, doing it better. And they probably do it 3 or 4 times, right? By doing this, they're involving themselves into what we call reflective learning. So they do that first, and then they come into the online arena, and then we review this material. And it works quite well, very well, actually, because they actually know what they did more in detail. They understand about the motivations of certain actions, why they did it, and
what works, what works
works
and why, and what it sounds like when it doesn't work.
Yes, and they actually think about the designs of structure as well as designs of the details within the such structure. And when they come ready like that, when you start to communicate with the students, it's enormously productive. So
yes,
yeah.
I mean, one of the hardest things in teaching that I have found is to get the student to hear themselves as they are heard by others. It's the hardest thing, in one's own playing too. This way, they are constantly their own recording engineers. They're hearing themselves exactly as others hear them, and sometimes they are surprised.
Yeah. So I mean, as a teacher, what we are striving to do is to develop their ears.
Yes.
More than developing their techniques, their musicality, their musical
it's a question.
It's the ears.
It's a question of what follows. What starts and what follows. The fingers obey the ear. The fingers obey what the ear hears. If the ear is not hearing anything, if the ear is listening to the inside of your head, what you're doing has no the car has no driver, and of course,
exactly.
The driver has to be up here, but there has to be a windshield that allows the driver to communicate with the vehicle.
Yes, I mean, we now live in AI world, and I would say that the ear is our sensor, and the brain is of course the processor,
the CPU.
And exactly, and we are constantly as teacher trying to upgrade the sensor. CPU we cannot do anything about. Yeah, to a certain degree, but you're born with you're born with it, but you can't upgrade it yourself. You have to do it yourself. We cannot do it, but with the ear we can help you. We are constantly trying to upgrade the sensor, this part, so that the whole feedback system is wholesome and healthy. We are always working with a very unhealthy feedback system where the fingers are leading the ears.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Or yes, processors.
And for pianists, I found. For pianists, I've even found that it's been easier for a pianist to hear him or herself than for a violinist to hear him or herself. I've found that something about the proximity of the instrument to the ear makes violinists. You don't have a pianist start a scale in C major and finish in D major.
No,
but I've had students. But I've had students do that.
But I'm really jealous that you guys can do that.
Well, until you have to get them to not do that or to do that on purpose. One of my favorite lines about PDQ Bach, where Peter Schickele said that PDQ Bach came up with polytonality, but only Stravinsky came up with polytonality on purpose.
Very good point.
I think we should open the floor to some questions. I see that there's a bunch of chats. I don't know if there are. No, this is just a conversation. So the question that I have to our producers, first of all, is, are there any questions? I don't see any. Not on my phone. Hang on. Okay, there are no questions. I wanted to make sure to leave time in case there were, people who wanted to pick your brain, in preparation for the e-competition and so on. But hopefully, when people watch the video, it will be up for quite a while. When people watch the video, if they have any questions, they will feel free to comment. I hope they do. They'll feel free to tune in to the next podcast. And that once the competition is concluded, I take it we will see we'll see the winners' performances on YouTube or on Facebook, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So really looking forward to seeing how all that plays out. What can I say? Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry to drop this whole interview in the middle of your morning, but I'm hoping that there might be a chance for us to do this again sometime soon.
Yes, thank you for having me here, Emil. I think we touched upon several very interesting subjects, and yeah, I'll be happy to
and essential subjects for especially for young people, for young people's parents, considering where to go and what to do now that the end of school is approaching. I think we covered a whole lot of topics for them to consider.
And I hope that some of this information will help them with their endeavors in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you, Emil.
Until next time.
Okay, see you next time.